Well. It's a very different USC Monday show here at the Voice of College Football. Mark Rogers isn't here, and it's different also because like none of us were expecting what we saw on Saturday night. Matt Zemek here with Tim Prangley here at the Voice of College Football, and like Caleb Williams throwing three first half interceptions, Alex Grinch's defense basically being irrelevant to the outcome of the game. Those are two plot points right there that no one was anticipating. Not one soul, not even the most diehard Notre Dame fan, would have predicted what happened on Saturday night. And not even the most diehard Oklahoma fan would have predicted that, Caleb Williams is going to throw three picks and Alex Grinch's defense is basically going to be just a bystander. A bystander, not in a negative way, but just like that did not matter. The matchup between Alex Grinch and Notre Dame's embattled offensive coordinator, Jared Parker, just never materialized. It was never a thing. If there's one negative thing you can say about the USC defense in this game, it's that when USC got within 24-13, the defense allowed a touchdown drive, on the very next possession for Notre Dame. But like that was the only real black mark of a 60-minute game. So like this defense was not the problem, allowed only 253 yards to Notre Dame. Like it just was peripheral. Like we were expecting the Alex Grinch, Jared Parker matchup to matter. It just didn't. Like that's not the way it played out. But what we do have is a genuine crisis at USC football. Now, some will say, this is the sky falling. Well, I don't know if the sky is falling, but we're certainly on track to have a failed season at USC. And a failed season, and this was pretty consistent for me throughout the off season, coming into the early weeks of this season, I was pretty plain. Like you absolutely have to make the Pac-12 championship game. Absolutely. And really, you need to win the Pac-12 championship. Now, whether or not you make the playoff, like that was up for debate, but you need to be in that Pac-12 title game and you need to win the Pac-12 title that slipped through your fingers a year ago in Las Vegas. And let's keep in mind that one of the advantages USC had if it got to the Pac-12 championship game was that USC's doesn't play on Thanksgiving weekend. Washington, Oregon, the rest of the Pac-12, they play on Thanksgiving weekend. So if USC could just qualify for Las Vegas, it would have a week off before that game on Friday, December 1st. So like it's advantage USC if the Trojans can get to Las Vegas. And I know that this loss was to Notre Dame. It's a non-conference loss, but let's be honest. Pete Carroll has Tell the Truth Monday, right? This is Tell the Truth Monday here at the Voice of College Football. Does anyone think that USC has a reasonably good chance of beating either Washington or Oregon right now? Tell the Truth Monday. Does USC have a reasonable chance, like 35, 40% chance of beating either the Huskies or the Ducks after what you saw on Saturday in Seattle preceding, USC's faceplant in South Bend? Like Washington, Oregon, that was a big boy game. That was a man's game. Felt like a main event, looked like a main event, hitting, physicality, teams, responding to each other's punches. Like that was a big boy game. And USC was a big boy team for much of last season. And USC is not a big boy team right now, not even close. And as we sift through the wreckage of this Notre Dame game, what can we say about why this team actually looks worse than 2022 instead of being better? Year one going to year two, you're supposed to have more stability, more familiarity within the system, within everything that's going on. This team looks lost. I mean, it looks less familiar. This program looks less stable now in year two from year one. That is a big red flashing alarm sign, right? Because when a coaching staff takes over from another coaching staff in year one, and it's interesting how USC and Oklahoma, where Lincoln Riley was and where Lincoln Riley is now. USC and Oklahoma have basically crisscrossed. That Lincoln Riley got year one right. Brent Venables at Oklahoma didn't. Like Lincoln Riley was able to make these instant changes, and also what he inherited from Clay Helton, Andrew Voorhees, Brett Nealon along the offensive line. The mixture of what Lincoln Riley immediately brought to USC, combined with the few really good players, also Tuli Tuipulotu as well, another inherited player from Clay Helton. The mixture that Lincoln Riley put together in year one, all of that worked. All of it fit together. And in year two, without Tuli, without Voorhees, without Nealon on the offensive line, Voorhees and Nealon in particular, also Bobby Haskins, though he was a portal pickup, but he was still really valuable last year. Without some guys who were really dependable on that offensive line last season, USC's offensive line has clearly taken a step back. And so when you get a situation, Tim, and I'll be turning it over to you in a moment for your thoughts and your general reaction to all of this, but when in year two, you see slippage and you see regression relative to week one with a coaching staff, like that is a real problem. Like if USC was at least maintaining a relative standard instead of, improving and raising the bar, which is what we hoped going into the season, if it was at least the same as 2022, that would be okay. That would be tolerable because the 2022 team did really well. But you have seen regression. This is getting worse. It's this team, instead of raising the bar from 2022, this team is falling short of the bar set by the 2022 team. And that is a huge problem for Lincoln Riley and USC in terms of what I've been writing at Trojans Wire on Tell the Truth Monday. One, Oklahoma fans were right. I mean, at least for this year. They weren't right about 2022, really. But for this season, the things that they were warning us about Lincoln Riley, this year, they've been correct. That's one thing. The second thing is coaches need to be coaching for their jobs against Utah and then on into November against Washington, Oregon. The assistants on this staff should not have guaranteed job security. They need to be entering these next few games realizing, like, I need to earn my place on this staff for 2024 when USC moves into the Big Ten. We can debate whether the coaching staff's biggest failure was just not evaluating players well enough in the offseason in terms of bringing them in through the portal, in sizing up what they had on the roster. Or we can say that the main problem is once players got in the program, they're not being developed. Teaching technique, teaching toughness, that's not measuring up. In reality, it's probably a little bit of both, but it's got to be at least one of the two, either the evaluation of players before they come in or the coaching of the players once they do come in. At least one of those two things, if not both, way short of the expected USC standard. And that invites all sorts of questions, but one is certainly that coaches should not feel that they have job security on this staff. So, Tim, I know that's a mouthful, but hey, we have a lot of problems to discuss and sort through here at the Voice of College Football. Where do you start? What are your primary thoughts after thinking about these things, for about 30 hours since the call-in show that you and I did on Sunday, Trojan Family Therapy? As you continue to wrestle with all of these things, what is foremost on your mind?
So was your question, to start us off again, were you saying there was like a yes or no? Do we think that they could still win the conference championship? Was that your question to us? Do we think we have a legitimate chance of winning the conference? The answer to that is a resounding yes. Because this team, we've seen it. This team, if it plays up to its talent level, it can beat Washington at home. I'm sure of that. If they're Autzen, the way Oregon's playing, it's gonna take a really great game. And if only we had a special guy a generational quarterback, like a Heisman Trophy winner, to lead us to victory up in Autzen. To say that there's no way they can do it, I'm not even coming close to that. Do I think it's likely? I don't think it's likely that we beat both Oregon and Washington. But
do you think it's likely? Do you think it's likely we beat one of them?
I think that it's likely we split. Yeah. And here's what I'm going to say. The reason why I'm saying it is because one, it's we're playing Washington at home. If we were playing up in Autzen and up in Seattle, then I would say probably not. This team has clearly shown itself to be a different team on the road, going back to last year as well. But at home, until I'm pretty sure, I think we're still undefeated under Lincoln Riley at home. So that game being at home is a huge boost. I think that Washington is playing lights out ball right now. I think that Oregon has shown me a lot that I didn't think they had. The good news is they still have Lanning calling plays up there. You never know when he's going to lose a game for them. So there's a bonus for us. But the issue here is on the offensive line, 100. It's just 100%. It's a number of things, but really the big issue here is on the offensive line. I think losing Gino Quinones now, we kind of thought it was an afterthought a couple of weeks ago. I mean, not an afterthought, but we didn't realize. But now looking back on that, he may have added some stability to an offensive line, especially on that right side that's reeling right now. And I do believe that Quinones might have been a difference maker. He was fighting for a starting job when he got injured. So I think that now is looming as a big loss that seemed like a big loss then, but now it seems like a massive loss to the Trojans. They had to throw this line together, patchwork. They did. You know, I think it's easier to bring in wide receivers from the portal and plug them right in. It's not the same thing. Look at this offensive line, you guys. So you have a brand new starting right tackle in Tarquin. You got a brand new starting right guard and Jarrett Kingston. You move your right guard from last year over to center with Justin Dedich. And then on the left side, you got Pregnon, right? Those guys are all brand new to either their position or the line. Yes, these are all veteran guys, but they haven't played together. And if one unit you need to gel as a team, it's them. They came in late. We talked about the transfers. They came in late. Pregnon was injured, right, all the way through fall ball. The other guys didn't play spring ball because they were transfers. So this has been kind of a work in progress, and it's now as these defenses get better and better, they're being exposed. And I went back and watched the game a little bit more. The issue was I kept saying, why isn't he stepping up? Why isn't Caleb stepping up? You know, why is he trying to roll out? Because they were kicking him in. They were not allowing him to roll out. Every time he did that backwards rollout, he was met by another Irish player. And so they're keeping him in the pocket. He did try stepping up. He did, I actually went back and looked. I was like, why aren't these throws getting out on schedule? Why aren't they getting out on time? They were, but when they're getting batted down at the line. There's no passing lanes. There's massive issues up front on the offensive line. And I don't think that as much as Oregon's getting touted as having this offense, they do not have corners like we saw in South Bend. So that also plays into this. Yes, I think Oregon's defense is good. I think their pass rush is absolutely legit, much better than the Irish. But overall, I don't think they have a better offense than the Irish. I just don't. I don't. And Washington's defense is playing better, is not an elite defense as well. So having them at home, the wild card here is, at the beginning of the season, the easy call is Autzen. Right? A tough place to play, a place that we've traditionally not played that great, loud, raucous on the road, everything our offensive line struggles with, right? But yeah, Matt, I mean, I don't know. I think you're throwing the white flag a little too early here. I think this team has shown us. Everyone here pretty much is proven except for this offensive line. They're going to have a couple more weeks to get this thing sorted out on the offensive line. But when they bring Washington in, I think that's going to be a big, big test.
Yeah, and of course, one of the plot points of this Utah game coming up is, we don't know if Cam Rising is going to play, but like the needle is moving toward Cam Rising not playing because he didn't play against Cal, and it seems as though this thing is just going to be pushed back even more. He might not be ready until November, but on the off chance that Cam Rising does play, and again, that doesn't seem likely right now, but if he does play, it's his season debut. And so even though Cam Rising is a baller and he beat USC twice last year, the idea that you can just come in cold with all the uncertainty about his knee. And remember, he said this wasn't just an injury, like he blew out his knee, a severe injury. The idea that Cam Rising can just come in off the street and immediately play well, he probably needed at least one tune-up before USC to have the expectation that he would play really well. So, either you get no Cam Rising or you get a diminished, uncertain Cam Rising who probably won't take many chances in the passing game. Like, it's a game that USC should definitely be expected to win. But that it also means that if the Trojans do not answer the bell, because we've been saying, Tim, the Arizona State game was a wake-up call. The second half against Colorado was a wake-up call. The Arizona game was a wake-up call. And the Trojans didn't wake up against Notre Dame in a really big-time game where they needed to show something special. So if you don't wake up after several wake-up calls, that tells me that you just don't have as much quality as was previously thought. But it does mean that, if Utah's coming in limited on offense, much as Notre Dame was. Now, Notre Dame's limitations were not really injury related, worrying about whether their number one quarterback could play. Notre Dame was just mediocre, and Notre Dame looked pretty mediocre on offense for much of the game. But of course, USC gift wrapped Notre Dame lots of touchdowns. But to get back to Utah, coming in without Cam Rising, like, USC is supposed to win against a Cam Rising-less Utah team. And if the Trojans can't put this game to bed, I mean, we have to call it a crisis. I mean, I can say right now, before the Utah game, before USC has lost a Pac-12 game this season, all right, fine. USC's not facing a crisis just yet. If USC loses to Utah without Cam Rising at home, then it's definitely a crisis.
Well, you brought up the point, and you were kind of pumping it all week with the Jared Parker versus Grinch, and I'm going to tell you, Matt, I think actually our defense did ring the bell call, because they didn't do anything really against this USC team. Matter of fact, their offensive success rate was 33%. Just so you guys don't know, 40% is below average. 50 is okay, right? 50 is average. The USC held them to 33% success rate and 2 missed tackles. Given what we see in the past, that is a light year jump from where we were before to this game. The tackling, I think we missed 18 or 17 tackles against Arizona. To have only 2 missed tackles, that's a solid comeback for this team. The defense did come out and passionate. Matter of fact, Tackett Curtis had one of his better games of the season. Much maligned linebacker for USC. A lot of people were really getting on him, but he did a really good job. Matter of fact, he led all tacklers on the team. He had 6 solo tackles and 1 tackle for loss. That's the good. The bad, there was only that one tackle for loss, was the only tackle for loss on the entire team, as well as no sacks. When we watched Louisville get to Notre Dame the prior week, they were all over him, and they were just coming right through that line. So maybe they kind of woke up a little bit, Matt. Maybe they weren't attacking as much. Maybe they were staying in those rush lanes, trying to contain and really trying to put pressure, but also not give up these big chunk plays like they're doing. Because there were a number of, when we needed, we were way down again, just like the previous week at Arizona. You can pull yourself out of that. This defense gave this offense every opportunity to get back in this game, and between special teams and the offense, they threw this thing down. I mean, if you think about it, we gave up 21 points and gave them, and all they had to get was 14 yards on offense to do that, right? They got the 2-yard touchdown, the 12-yard touchdown after 2 interceptions, and then they got a 99-yard kick return. You hand them 21 points on 14 yards, you're not going to win many games. So overall, we were calling Grinch out on this. You got to shut this Gerard Parker guy. They don't have much. He did. Yep. One explosive. You told me you were going to one explosive 250 yards for the entire game. One explosive, missed 2 tackles, and hold them to under 250 yards total. I would have said we win this game by 30. I just didn't know that what was going to happen on the offense side of the ball.
No question. And, so like the idea that Grinch, is going to be fired before the end of the season, like, we can put that to bed. That's not going to happen, and it shouldn't happen. So like, thankfully we don't have to talk about that plot point, but now we have to talk about Josh Henson, right? Because Josh Henson did a really good job with the 2022 offensive line, but he had Andrew Voorhees, Brett Nealon, and also Bobby Haskins from the portal, but he had from the Clay Helton regime, he had Voorhees and Nealon. And we can really appreciate, folks, watching here at the Voice of College Football, how good those two guys were. And I know, Tim, that one of the big points of emphasis for you in terms of the USC offensive line was continuity, and how all the guys from last year, were very familiar playing together. It's not just being comfortable in their own roles, but knowing how to communicate and link up together as an offensive line. And you don't have that same connectivity with this year's offensive line. But as much as connectivity and playing together matter to a certain extent, you also have to look at just the individual quality of the individual linemen involved. And Voorhees and Nealon clearly set the bar very high. And the other guys on this offensive line, they're not matching that standard. And retracing the point I made earlier about, going from year one to year two, and what a coaching staff inherits, and then what happens when the coaching staff begins to have a higher percentage of its own players as you get into year two and then year three, you've seen slippage. And so, like Josh Henson, I don't think his position on this staff is on the line to the extent that Alex Grinch's position is, or also to the extent that strength coach Benny Wiley's position should be. But nevertheless, like, Josh Henson does need to coach this line really well over this next month against these big boy opponents, Utah, Washington, Oregon. I'm not predicting that this will happen, but if USC does get physically overpowered consistently by these higher end Pac-12 opponents, Lincoln Riley will face a real decision about who should be his offensive line coach next year.
I'm nowhere near ready to pull the plug on Henson. I mean, I don't know if I talked to you, if it was Gabe from Trojan Blade. I can't remember, but what he did last year, granted, I'm giving a little tip to Clay McGuire, who did a great job getting the offense the previous year again, and kind of getting the momentum. They put together the offensive line, and I said it way back then that it was one of the strengths of the team way back. But what he did last year with his line, the protection, everything, I mean, I was very impressed with it. And the good news is, for people that are freaking out about the portal, et cetera, the players, et cetera, we had a great recruiting class. The year before, they came in late. You're not going to get much of a class there. But, Elijah Page, Amos Taulele, Micah Banuelos, Alani Noah, and Tobias Raymond, I think that Josh Henson's absolutely going to mold those guys. I want Henson to stay, make those guys absolute front runners. I'm very excited about that lineup of freshmen. I think that all those guys have a very good chance to start, to be honest with you. And that's just, you got centers, guards, true tackles in that group. I really have a lot of faith in that. But that's down the road. That's a year or two away. This year, maybe we were just asking too much. Like you said, you're replacing two All-Americans. It's a complete shuffle. I mean, nobody's really playing where they played last year. I mean, Monheim got some time, but I mean, other than that, this is all new. Yes, you did have Didich playing, but he's playing right guard. He wasn't playing center. There have been a lot of issues with center. I know I was talking to someone. They said he's dinged up. I get it. But there have been some snapping issues. There have been some line calls. There have been some weird stuff going on front that needs to get tightened up. And I don't know if we're putting too much on this offensive line to think this was going to be a national championship offensive line. It was kind of thrown together, it looks like. Individually, these guys are all coming in with their accolades. These are all great athletes. They have the bona fides to show up at USC that we thought that they were going to come in, plug and play, and let's go again. But it's not like that sometimes on the offensive line. And I think we were really spoiled last year with Nealon having a multi-year starter at center. You just cannot overstate having a quality center and what that can bring to your offense. And I think we're seeing some struggles because of it.
Yeah, and one of the things that does need to be mentioned here. I mean, Tim, like you make sound points in terms of how much of a reshuffle this was, and Didich specifically having to play a different position. It's not just the the other pieces on the offensive line, but that your veteran is having to play a different position relative to last year. I mean, those are salient, important points. But also, like that is also the nature of college football and college sports in general. That roster turnover, it's part of the deal. Like, it's rare to have a group of seasoned upperclassmen guys, who all come back and who all know how to play together, such as what USC had last year with Voorhees, Nealon, and Dedich, being three anchors, and then you also having Bobby Haskins, a seasoned veteran. You're going to have turnover. Like, last year was not like a normal situation for a college football program's offensive line. Usually you have to deal with, a lack of retention. Usually you have to deal with different pieces in different spots. So, like, that's not the norm. That was like a rare confluence of favorable factors for USC. So, of course, it's a reshuffle this year. Like, that's what college coaching staffs and college offensive line coaches need to do. Now, I will say that, the guys that Henson, the younger guys that Henson has recruited, brought into the program, that's an excellent reason to make sure that Henson gets 2024 to, carry forward some momentum and build his relationships with the young guys. I mean, like, I do think that Henson, all things considered, should stay for 2024. But I would also point out that if this offensive line just collapses, if this offensive line doesn't get off the mat, and again, we saw how physical Washington and Oregon both were this past Saturday. If Washington and Oregon just completely manhandle USC in the trenches, not predicting that will happen, but I will say that there's a significant chance it will happen. If USC just gets completely overwhelmed by both the Huskies and then the Ducks in consecutive weeks, like, if that comes to pass, I would prefer it not, but if it does come to pass, like, we have to reevaluate and question pretty much everything about this coaching staff surrounding Lincoln Riley going into next year.
Let's let it play out, Matt. I'm with you. You got big fans in the crowd. Everyone's angry. They got their pitchforks out. We're ready to throw the season away. You are their champion. That we're going to go, 7-5, and we're going to fire our staff. That's what some of these guys are saying. I think these guys are just, you have to sometimes remember we've been watching football for years, and to think that you're just going to burn a whole staff away because we lost to Notre Dame. We might lose to 2 top 5 teams. I'm just trying to tell you, one of them being up at Austin. I just sometimes I think fans get a little too wrapped up in we're number one to realize that there were some fundamental issues with this team. We knew there were question marks on defense. And as we've been trying to tell you for the past 20 minutes, literally they've put this line together this year. A lot of other programs. Here's a couple of things. How many years did it take Harbaugh to beat Ohio State and Michigan? Yeah, they're on a roll now, but they were trying to get rid of them 3 years ago. How long did it take Saban to win his first national champion? Some people need to stop and think that Lincoln Riley's been here a year and a half. And now you're already talking about, literally there are people, Matt, in this fan base. They're talking about, they hope Lincoln Riley goes to NFL. The people get caught up in all this stupid comments that we don't have a top coach. Quite frankly, we're going to have the receipts on a lot of people saying that, go ahead. And I hope that you say, yeah, we're going to keep receipts on this too. Yeah, Lincoln Riley is an elite coach, period. You guys are drinking too much. You get angry. We lose one game and everyone loses their mind, starts drinking the Sooner juice. And that Kool-Aid stinks. It stunk back then. It stinks now. Lincoln Riley is an elite coach, period. Worst case, they get a couple new coaches and they're right back on top. But the thought that you want Lincoln Riley to go, some of you guys just got to get some more sense, because it's just it's kind of getting embarrassing, to be honest.
Well, that's a ridiculous overreaction. But in terms of Lincoln Riley cleaning house on his staff, I think that's a very different and much more realistic conversation to have. But I would say, Tim, that, okay, if we lose to Washington and Oregon and we're competitive, in both games, that would be a very different story from losing to both teams big. So obviously the details and the context definitely matter. So it's not so much a matter of, oh, if we lose to Oregon and Washington, what a bunch of bums. No, it's if we get dominated.
Question, just
Oregon.
Matt, just a question for you to help out the chat. How many times has Lincoln Riley been to the playoffs?
Three
times. This man's been to the playoffs 3 times with those defenses. So I'm sorry. Some of the comments and the chat, some of the stuff I've seen on Twitter, it's downright embarrassing as a Trojan to see some of you guys. You guys got to act like Trojans. Maybe some of you aren't Trojans. Maybe you guys are just trolls. I don't really know at this point. Yes, be critical. Yes, be skeptical about the defense. Absolutely skeptical about the offensive line. But try to maintain your composure and act like you know what football is. Because number one, the sky isn't falling. We're looking probably at maybe a 10-2, 9-3 season, and some of you guys are losing your minds like the sky is falling. I think maybe people like me as well. I thought we were gonna do a lot better than we did so far this season. But you still have to realize they are still only a 1-loss team, and they're undefeated in conference. There is a chance they lose to the Ducks, right? And still make it to the conference championship game if, let's say, the Beavers knock them off in the Civil War. I mean, there's a lot going on. People really have to think you don't have to go undefeated. I think that, maybe it's probably the idea is this being a playoff team probably look very, very slim. And then if they did make it to the playoffs, that might be very, very ugly for them. But this is a solid team. We are leap years ahead. If you want to call me an apologist or that I'm crying or whatever, no, I'm laughing at some of you guys because this defense has been bad, but they are improving. The last 2 weeks, this defense is getting better. You can be like the HR pick and stuff guy who thinks that the world's always, he's had a boner for Grinch since day one because he didn't want him coming over from Oklahoma. There's always those guys that cry like babies and would rather see USC lose and they be right than actually USC turn around and make something happen. Right now, it looks like USC is probably looking at least one more loss from what I've seen on the field, especially with that offensive line. But at the end of the day, you guys need to relax. I'm very happy we have Lincoln Riley. I almost want to take a screenshot of some of the nonsense in this chat so that maybe a year from now when you got Riley, we're going to the playoffs. You guys need to be a little less like a 17-year-old teenager and more like a person that's watched football for 10 to 20 years.
One thing I think everyone in the chat needs to do, and of course, this is a little bit of self-promotion here, but one thing I wrote about on Tell the Truth Monday at Trojans Wire was, just why has Lincoln Riley failed at USC this season? And we need to go through Lincoln Riley's history at Oklahoma. And folks, I don't know how much of Lincoln Riley's history at Oklahoma you've studied, but remember a year ago, we did the Riley Files series with an Oklahoma analyst, a guy who covered the Sooners when Riley was there. He's been in press rooms. He asked Lincoln Riley questions, like he looked Lincoln Riley in the eye in press conference settings, like he's interacted with him, has a really good feel for what makes Lincoln Riley tick. And on this Riley Files series, 12 different podcast episodes last year, it was a real deep dive going through the nuances of Lincoln's history with the Sooners. And this analyst, he certainly has his critiques of Riley and, didn't like several aspects of how he went about his business. But he was able to say that, Lincoln Riley is a genius in terms of play calling, play design, exploiting the weaknesses in a defense. Like he basically called it like he saw it. Some things USC fans wouldn't like, but there were plenty of instances in this podcast series where this Oklahoma analyst was able to give Riley credit and appreciate the talent that he has. I mean, he's developed 3 Heisman Trophy winners before turning age 40. He had a 4th, Jalen Hurts, who was a Heisman runner-up. So this guy was willing to give Lincoln Riley credit in plenty of places. You might not like what he said on a lot of other things, but the point is, this is a good time to revisit Lincoln Riley's history at OU and what went right and what went wrong and why. And I looked into those details. And one of the things that really comes up is when Bill Biedenbaugh, when Riley was hired by USC in November of 2021, we were wondering, would Bill Biedenbaugh, the offensive line coach at Oklahoma, would he come over to USC with Lincoln Riley? Obviously, Grinch was retained, Roy Manning was retained. Other members of the staff were retained. Benny Wiley, the strength and conditioning coach, whom I've mentioned, but Biedenbaugh didn't come over. And it's really worth noting that Biedenbaugh was the offensive line coach throughout Riley's 5-year tenure at Oklahoma. And that, like, details like that, I'm not saying it's the main detail, but like it's an important detail in terms of explaining why Riley was able to make 3 college football playoffs and was able to win 4 straight Big 12 championships. So without offering like some huge final verdict on everything, I would just invite you to read what I wrote about Lincoln Riley at Oklahoma, about the criticisms of Oklahoma fans. It's not an emotional exercise. It's patiently sifting through the details of Riley's history. This thing, Riley had this for all 5 years. He had this for 2 years. He had this for 3 years. And these were the pieces of the jigsaw puzzle that in some years fit really well. In other years, they didn't fit quite as much. It's a good time for USC fans to really study up on those details. And, putting those pieces together forms a clear picture of why certain things have gone wrong this season at USC, but also how Lincoln Riley can repair things. And that's the kind of conversation we should be having right now instead of just a hysterical freak out.
So this stuff right here is what I'm talking about. I know Connor's a Beaver, but he's talking about turning over the offense from Lincoln Riley to Cliff Kingsbury. This is the nonsense that I'm trying to talk about. I'm not trying to be mean, but talking about being a ball knower, Connor, you just said you want to turn the offense over to Cliff Kingsbury and take it out of the hands of Lincoln Riley. I mean, you've got to think better than that. And Walker Lamer, the coach. So here, oh no, I'm sorry, that's not the right one. Who was the person? Oh, here it is, Adam. He got crushed in all. No, he took Georgia to double. Oh, was it double or triple overtime? I can't remember.
I think double, but like it was a squeaker. Yeah.
Right. So he didn't get crushed. And yeah, I do remember that LSU team blew everybody out. That was like a legendary team. Should they get blown out? No. Should their defense have been better? Absolutely. But that LSU team kicked the shit out of a lot of teams, man. It's not like that was, again, it's not that was like 2023 Notre Dame with a tight end coach. All right. It's not that. So some of you guys slow down a little bit. I'm trying not to be patronizing. I don't know everything, but some of the comments you guys are making are just a way too knee-jerk, and you guys got to walk back from the ledge and realize last year did happen. You know that coach that everyone was like fawning over? Yeah, that's still the same coach. Oh, well, he didn't fire the defensive coordinator. If we lose a game, and by the way, we lost a game, and it wasn't because of Grinch. I told you guys that if Grinch costs him a national championship because the defense is losing games for them, then he's gone. We're going to really see. Grinch will be basically coaching for his job in that Washington and Oregon game, bar none. If they throw up a ton of points, but here's the thing: how many yards did Washington get on Oregon, and how many yards did Oregon get on Washington the other night? It wasn't like it was an Illinois versus Iowa game. I mean, it was, they were both throwing up mad points on each other, and everyone's telling us how good the Oregon defense is. How many yards did Oregon give up? How many points did Oregon give up? So I think everybody has to realize, one, Grinch is not going to be retained. This whole thing that Riley's going to keep Grinch because he's his friend. Can we just stop with that stuff as well? The man probably has, all things being equal, but this guy wants to win national championships. If anyone here in this chat thinks that there wasn't a strong, long conversation with Lincoln Riley about the fact that if they lose because of Grinch, that he needs to go, and that Lincoln Riley didn't have that same kind of conversation with Grinch at some point this year, or probably every week this year, I don't know. I think you guys are just like somewhere listening too much Oklahoma noise. He's not going to retain coaches on this staff that aren't pulling their weight. I'm sorry. This is not high school. They don't have BFFs. These are professionals. At every place they talk about, this is his favorite, so he's going to keep him. That doesn't happen. That doesn't happen. This is real football, and coaches want to win. And if he's the reason why Riley isn't winning, he's going to get rid of him.
And we're going to find that out soon enough in these next few weeks. The other thing we have to also say, and this is another detail about Riley's years at Oklahoma and putting these larger pieces together. Yeah, Benny Wiley. So he is USC's strength and conditioning coach, and so Oklahoma in Riley's first season as head coach at Oklahoma in 2017, Jerry Schmidt was the strength coach. But then Riley wanted Benny Wiley to be his new strength and conditioning coach, so he brought him aboard for 2018. Now, it's interesting. Oklahoma made the playoff in 2018 and 19, just as it did in 2017. But, the performance overall wasn't quite as good as it was in 2017 under Jerry Schmidt. Guess who's Oklahoma's strength and conditioning coach right now? Guess who came in with Brent Venables after Riley left? Jerry Schmidt. He went to Texas A&M for the few years that Benny Wiley was at Oklahoma. But then when Lincoln went to USC and brought Benny Wiley with him, Jerry Schmidt went back to Oklahoma to join Venables. Now, in year one, that was a mess. And Venables and Schmidt and the rest of that staff had to sort through all sorts of problems. But then after they got one full off season, one full cycle, then in year two, look what Oklahoma's doing right now with Jerry Schmidt. And that defense contained Quinn Ewers and the rest of the Texas offense, made a big goal line stand. That Oklahoma defense is physical, it's tough, it's strong under Jerry Schmidt. And you compare, the way USC is playing on its lines, defense for most of the season, the offensive line for the past several weeks under Benny Wiley, and you hold that up against what Jerry Schmidt is doing at Oklahoma now and what he did do for Lincoln Riley in 2017 before Riley brought in Benny Wiley in 2018, there's a clear gap between the Jerry Schmidt level of strength, toughness, and physicality on a football team and the standard that Benny Wiley has produced in his time under Lincoln Riley. And so strength and conditioning is another area of USC football's larger operations where Lincoln Riley needs to see some real progress over this next month against Utah and then especially Washington and Oregon. If he doesn't see that progress, Benny Wiley is a guy whose job security also needs to come under heavy scrutiny, and he might need to be sent packing.
This one right here, we have a super chat. He was trying to prove some point, we haven't heard it ad nauseum, but I'm popping as soon as I can. I don't know why I can't pull it up.
It's coming with a super chat, so
there we go. So explain why Riley's defenses at OU always sucked, and why SC's defenses are no better. We cannot win a natty with these defenses. So here's what I will tell you. Short history. I'm sure, Adam, I've got a good feeling you might know a lot about Oklahoma's defenses. I'll be point blank with you. He was saddled with Stoops' brother, Mike Stoops, for a while, and those defenses were wretched. I mean, worse than what you're seeing now. And Riley brought in Grinch, who improved them, but clearly did not get them to a championship level. Then after a couple of years with Grinch there, he came to rebuild a defense here at USC. This is a year and a half into a rebuild. I don't know how to stress this to you people. Anyone that watched the 2021 Trojan defense, anybody that knows anything about football, I remember watching that Oregon State game, looking at it and going, this is literally the worst defense I've ever seen on the Coliseum in my entire life. And I'm getting up there, guys. So Anyone that thought that they're to come in and go a little pixie dust and magic, now all of a sudden we've got a championship defense like they've been building in Georgia for a better part of almost 15 years, right? These things don't just pop up overnight. And I think that I said it on the post-game show, and I might even said in the call-in show, Matt, Riley did himself a huge injustice by being so successful in 1 year. Big part of that was that offensive line that he did inherit, but you give Lincoln Riley a solid, doesn't have to even be, a Morris winning line. It just has to be a solid offensive line. And he's going to tear up defenses across the country. What we saw on Saturday was serious deficiencies in our offensive line that were exposed because as the season has gone on, like I just said, the defense are getting better and the flaws. Why do you think they were shuffling those guys around? I mean, I was blind to it. I thought, okay, they're just getting some experience, blah, blah, blah. It's because they couldn't figure out who's actually going to protect Caleb. And I'm kind of worried about Caleb's health. I hope those flak jackets are tight this week because these Utes can hit. And if he gets a free run, if one of these guys sees a free run at Caleb, it may not be pretty. Do not oversimplify things here, you guys. Okay. This is what? Halfway through the second season they have, and you guys are expecting everything to be fixed. I wish it was. It clearly isn't. I think we all just got a bit hyped up after last season. I think that right now we think that we should be going to the playoffs in year 2. I mean, everyone needs to slow down a little bit. And they need, if there are obviously deficiencies on defense, I think Grinch has had enough time. I absolutely do. He's got the players. One thing for sure, he may not have the players they have over at Georgia, but he does have better players than they have at Alabama, at Arizona. Much better players than they have at Colorado. You know what I mean? So we should be outplaying these teams, and definitely seems like there's something wrong on the defense. Anyone wants to put the apologist label on me, you're trying too hard. I've been talking about problems with this defense for weeks now. And the one thing you can be safe about is, one, they either correct it or they're going to get another defensive coordinator. They're not going to keep them because they're best friends. That's just, again, is more ignorant talk. Matt, your thoughts on why the defense still sucks after a whole year and a half that they've been here?
Well, I do think there are legitimate questions about strength and conditioning because I do think that USC is a soft team, at least right now. I mean, the defense did show signs of improvement against Notre Dame, but of course, Notre Dame is not going to be the kind of offense that really tests a defense at all levels in all ways. But overall, USC is a soft program right now. I mean, for most of the past few weeks, it was on the defensive side, but really the past 2 weeks, the offensive line has not come ready to play. And, when we keep saying, well, this is the game that's going to wake these guys up, and this is the game, upcoming that it's a really big spotlight moment. And this is the time when we're going to see players elevate their games. Well, it hasn't happened yet. Not that it can't, like it definitely could, but boy, we got to see against Utah guys playing with pride, playing with passion on both sides of the ball, both sides of the line of scrimmage. And if we don't get that, that's going to tell us that this coaching staff is not able to turn things around. And that's not something that any of us were anticipating, that this coaching staff would fail on both sides of the ball, not just one, to be able to create, steady improvement, development from players. This team has gotten steadily worse since the Stanford game. It's been worse. I mean, the Colorado first half is kind of the exception, but Arizona State, Arizona, Notre Dame, that is a definite downward trajectory. Since the third quarter of the Colorado game, this offense has really struggled on numerous levels. So here we have Utah, a team that beat USC twice last year, prevented the Trojans from making the college football playoff. It's at the Coliseum. Team is coming off a loss. If we don't see every Trojan going all out and just playing with extreme passion and commitment and toughness, that is going to be a cause for concern. And maybe USC is able to win because Cam Rising's not playing, but the win matters most. But what also matters just as much as the win is, do we see a tough team, both sides of the ball, 60 minutes, really looking like a team that is willing to spill it all on the field. We have not seen that kind of team this season. I mean, USC played a complete, virtually perfect first half against Stanford, but that's Stanford. Like, we need to see USC play a complete half against a legitimately good football team. And Utah, two-time defending Pac-12 champion, made back-to-back Rose Bowls, Kyle Whittingham, like that's a good team. Maybe not a great team, but it's a good team. So let's see these guys put it all together against a good team. We have to see it. And if it keeps not happening, the only conclusion to make is this coaching staff is out to lunch.
So let's maybe we should transition to just talk a little bit about the Utah game. We've spent like an hour talking about how bad USC is. Let's one more thing here. So I wouldn't say USC had an easy schedule last year. The Pac-12 actually had a very good conference last year as well. I'd say that it was easier than this year, without a doubt, playing on the road at Notre Dame, playing up at Autzen, and playing Washington. I would say it was easier. But last year was not an easy schedule. The Pac-12 had 5-6 teams in the top 25. I mean, so we're not playing like it wasn't some cupcake schedule USC had last year. I think you're missing the boat on that one completely. And then we have another one here from my favorite troll. Why has USC lost the modern day and SoCal pipelines? Is Riley paying more attention to Texas than his backyard? A simple answer here is that I think there's a different philosophy up in Oregon when it comes to recruiting freshmen. It's been said time and time again, hinted at from the staff, that they are not throwing big cash at unproven prospects. Oregon is doing that, and that is helping them land. And I'll tell you what, I just talked about him before this we went live here. What was the name of the offensive lineman that they lost when he was all USC, goes up to Oregon in the 11th hour, they drop a bag on him, now all of a sudden he's all duck. I forgot what his name is. Josh Connerly. How different would this team be right now? Even though we're talking about how hard it is to have a freshman start at tackle, but how different would this team be right now if we have Josh Connerly at left tackle and we slide Monheim over to right tackle? I bet you things were different in South Bend if that had been the case. So, yeah, maybe they need to change the philosophy on that. Maybe we do need to start at least make exceptions for some of these linemen and say, what do they give you in Oregon? We'll double it. There we go. Boom. Just go that route. There's a way to do that as well. But I think it's also, 1 year here and thinking the sky is falling is also a bit extreme. Remember this, all these kids right now that are giving their pledge to go somewhere else lived through the Helton. They were around for the Helton years, and they saw 1 year of Riley, and they're seeing this year. It's going to take some time to turn some of these kids and some of these coaches and some of these families back around to USC, because USC ran itself into the ground for the better part of a decade. They're not the kind of name that we used to be. USC's got to start winning and winning consistently, and then these guys start coming.
Well, and that's why, going 9-3 this season would be a problem, right? One of the things that we've talked about, you and I, Tim, in our off-season shows and in previous weeks, is that, if fans are worried about recruiting and how well that's going, and, USC hasn't had a 24 commit since early July, basically the 4th of July weekend. One of the things we said was, don't worry about the recruiting. As long as USC wins, and prospects get proof of concept, then it's going to be okay. But if USC finishes 9-3 and doesn't even make the Pac-12 championship game, that's not going to be proof of concept. And it's going to create more of an uphill battle. I'm not saying an impossible battle, but it's going to create more of an uphill battle for this staff on the recruiting trail, which would underscore the point that, there need to be new assistants that can upgrade the level of player development and player evaluation to make sure that the best product is on the field in 2024 when USC moves into the Big Ten.
Jalen Harvey also I think it was today, is going to Penn State, not USC. That was a huge rush end issue. But here's what I'm saying. Well, you're talking about, Matt, you're bringing up development and identifying guys. I'm really some of the guys that they've brought in. So I think everyone's just panicking because look at the guys like Solomon Byrd. He was brought in. Jamil Muhammad, he was brought in. So they're going out and they're scouting guys. Those weren't big names, but they showed up here on campus. They've been developed and they're playing out of their minds. So if we're talking development, if we're talking about scouting the right guys, anyone here want to argue picking up Jamil Muhammad and Solomon Byrd? I'd love to talk to you. Go ahead and drop something here so we can have that conversation. Another one here. We got another super chat. I would bet a mortgage on Riley never having a D. I don't know if that's a double entendre. You're getting weird on us, but I will tell you that you would bet that. Really? He's at USC. You think he's going to never get a good defensive coordinator or elite defensive coordinator? I'd be shocked. What do you think, Matt? You think there's a chance? Because remember, Lincoln Riley doesn't care about defense, right? At least that's what Oklahoma tells us. And now most of the Trojans are starting to believe it. Do you think Lincoln Riley is incapable of getting a good defensive coordinator?
I mean, it's up to Lincoln Riley to make the choice, but certainly, like if he values winning as much as I think he does, and as much as you think he does, he will look for an elite defensive coordinator this coming December. And so if he does that, like that will fix that. I mean, like in terms of the Alex Grinch conversation, I mean, it's an old conversation, but we just have to go back to what we've been saying in the offseason, that the time to make a move was in January when Jim Leonard was available. That was the time to make a run at him. But, when Lincoln Riley decided that he wanted to run it back with Alex Grinch, okay, like fine. Like it was a reasonable decision. It wasn't the decision that I personally would have made, but like it's year two. You just had a good year one, not a great year one, but a very good year one. So keep a guy for your second year at a program and see what he does. Give a professional a chance to improve, a chance to show what he can do once and for all. Like we all agreed, whether we wanted Grinch fired after year one or not, regardless of that, just about every USC fan could agree this was a prove it year for Alex Grinch. And then, during the season or after the season, we would pretty much know whether Grinch deserved to come back for a third year in 2024. So the idea that Lincoln Riley is never going to have a defense, well, I mean, that does seem a little bit premature, if only because if he fires Grinch and brings in an elite defensive coordinator, chances are he's going to have a good defense before too long. But like we do have to wait and see what Lincoln Riley decides to do and really how he handles a lot of different positions on his coaching staff. So we're not going to find answers to that until December. And so, we just have to wait and see what Lincoln Riley ultimately does. Then we can perhaps answer some of these questions with a lot more clarity, but we're not going to know for at least 6-7 weeks. We have to just sit there with that level of uncertainty right now.
Corey, if you want to take shots at me, feel free. Let's go over what I've said. All right. I've said you don't fire defensive coordinator in the middle of a season. I've said that something needs to be changed if things don't happen. Those weren't very popular. I have never once, Matt, if you want to call me on this, have I ever said that I want us to just live off the portal? Can we get the chat and like actually use our heads? Because I've never come close to saying that. Matter of fact, I'm a huge recruit person going way back. I follow it almost to a sickness. So Corey, not sure if you watch our show, but you're pretty far off base there. Do better. Another super chat. Tim, you are giving it to 10%. It was troubling, yes. However, it is not time to get a shovel yet by any means. Help me out here, Matt. I'm trying to digest this. So I'm not sure if you're saying the 10% being the 10% of people that have lost their minds, because some of you guys have out there. Many of you haven't. It's troubling that Trojans, when it's fight on is our slogan, literally going back about a decade now, some of you guys lose your freaking minds whenever we lose a game. Hey, that's being a fan. But don't come talking nonsense. That's the only time I push back on you guys is when you say things that you want Lincoln Riley to go to the NFL and stuff like that. I mean, I don't know what to tell you. Then maybe you're falling. Maybe this just isn't the right sport for you, because it does take a little bit. Well, two things. One, it takes you to have a little bit of like balls to handle a loss like a man, right? We're not on the team. We're not getting fired. I hope we all have other jobs out there. Enjoy the damn game and realize that it's college football. You're going to lose. And sometimes you're going to get embarrassed. I don't think any of us have the power to make any of these calls. I think all of you have every right to be upset, and you can shake your stick, but just don't make dumb comments. Think about what you're saying before you say it, because honestly, I don't think a year from now you guys will be saying that you wish that Riley was in the NFL. I think it's absurd.
Just looking at the chat, looking at some of the comments here at the Voice of College Football, and I know we're going to wind up the show pretty soon.
Oh, there's more super chats.
Yep. But just looking at some of the comments here, people are saying, 6-1 is not that bad. And we can still win the Pac-12. Entirely true. I would say, and also people reacting to, one loss, and what that means. Couple nuances here. If you're 6-1 against a really high-end schedule, like look at, for instance, Florida State's schedule. Florida State's played LSU, played Clemson. Like Florida State has already played a few particularly formidable teams. Think of other teams that have played really tough schedules to this point in the season. Going 6-1 against a tough schedule versus 6-1 against the schedule USC's played, like there's some daylight there. Like USC's played the lower end of the Pac-12, Stanford, Nevada, San Jose State. So that's a soft 6-1. Not all 6-1s, not all records are equal based on whom you have played. So if USC was 6-1, having played Clemson, LSU, and let's also say Oregon State, that would feel very different. In fact, last year, USC went 6-0, winning a road game at Oregon State in Corvallis, beating Washington State at home. Like USC had achieved more last year, but going 6-0 than it achieved this year going 6-0. So we should differentiate that. And then about, this idea of, panicking after a loss. Well, it was a blowout loss, and it was a blowout loss to a team that didn't have a very good offense. Last year's first loss was the 43-42 loss to Utah in Salt Lake City, the kind of game where like you were really disappointed that the team lost, but you recognized it was a great game. The offense played really well. The team displayed heart. The team displayed toughness. The refs screwed USC on that roughing the passer call in the fourth quarter. So it was a very different kind of loss compared to the Notre Dame loss. So, there are these surface details, 6-1, 6-0, and how good it is. We need to get into the nitty-gritty of the teams that we've been playing. And then in terms of being upset about a loss, well, what kind of a loss was it? The Utah loss last year and this Notre Dame loss this year, worlds apart in terms of how bad and how alarming each of those respective losses look. So we need to get some context. If we just say, 6-1, 6-1 last year, 6-1 this year, pretty much the same. Now, that is an unsophisticated take, and we need to look underneath the surface and appreciate just how valuable a 6-1 record is this year compared to last year or compared to other seasons in which USC has been 6-1. And then when we talk about reacting to a loss, well, this Notre Dame loss is very different from that Utah loss, and all of that context has a lot to do with what should be the appropriately calibrated reaction to this situation at USC.
So if you guys haven't already, make sure you guys hit that subscribe button down in the corner over there by Matt. Actually, if you look in the bottom corner by his left shoulder, you'll see the subscribe button. Go ahead, hit that subscribe button. Appreciate you guys being here, most of you. And I hope that some of you guys can hit that subscribe button and hit the notification bell, because we will be going. We had a question here if we're on every day. Thursday, we have the call-in show, but we will have pop-up call-in shows depending on losses, depending on big news. So if you are subscribed and you do hit that notification, you will know when we go live, when we go randomly live. We have this one right here, Tim. I want Urban. See, I mean, Adam, dude, I want Urban Meyer. As soon as I read that, I'm just kind of done with the conversation, to be honest with you. This has been going on for like 3 years that people think Urban Meyer's ever going to coach again. And Dave Aranda as DC. How about we have Lincoln Riley and Dave Aranda as DC? You know, again, this idea, Adam, that you don't want Lincoln Riley as your head coach, you're totally entitled to your opinion. We here at the USC channel, we appreciate your generous donations. I just not sure what Lincoln Riley did to you. I don't know why you don't think that he could be a successful coach here at USC. But I will never, ever wear a Yankee hat. Sorry, that's just never gonna happen. I think it's a sharp looking hat, but I'm a born and raised. I mean, I'm wearing this because it was a rough week for me. My teams went down this week, but you will never see. I think they're sharp hats. I think it's a great style. It's classic Yankee hat, but you will never see a Yankee hat on my head. Any thoughts on Urban Meyer, Matt?
None that are worth mentioning on this show.
Okay. See, do we have any more? I think that might be it. Hold on. Yeah, I think that's all we got. So we got the mortgage question. We got, yeah, I think we have them all. Here's one that was from earlier. This is the comment that I'm talking about. The defense dropped from 27 to 30. Do you know how many of those points were on turnovers? Do you know the short fields that defense saw? I mean, these are the kind of, these guys think that they know football and they make comments like this. It's either A, they know football. I think this guy does know football, but he's being clearly obtuse for a reason because he's stuck on a message. Anybody that is being serious about this knows the fact that defense for 2 weeks now has been put in bad spots. And, you know, it was the week before we gave them the ball also on the 12-yard line. They scored a touchdown. I mean, these kind of things are not on the defense when you're giving them the ball 3 times inside the 50. I don't know what you think that's going to do to their scoring. This is not a solid defense. It is improving, kind of like I've been saying the entire year. So, Matt, let's get to Arizona really quick, because the chat's killing me. I think we spent too much time in the chat tonight. Matt, your thoughts on Arizona?
You mean Utah?
It's on Utah. Sorry, I'm stuck on Arizona.
Just Arizona. Like, Arizona looks like a good team, and so the USC's win over Arizona looks a lot more impressive after Arizona goes into Pullman and beats Washington State 44-6. So that's really interesting. That Noah Fafita really seems to have upgraded Arizona a lot compared to Jaden Delora. But anyway, the Utah game. So right now, if you ask me, this is Monday night, I would say Cam Rising probably doesn't play. And if Cam Rising doesn't play, you know, this is a game USC should win. And even if Rising does play, it's going to be his season debut after the long injury layoff. Hard to imagine him being supremely effective. But, you know, the big thing is, like, after being embarrassed at Notre Dame, every Trojan should be extremely fired up. Like Lincoln Riley should not have to give a motivational speech. Alex Grinch should not have to give a motivational speech. Guys should be ready to run through a brick wall, and we should see real pride, real commitment from every USC player and everything that they do. And also it starts with Caleb Williams making good decisions. And, like, you know, if you're not sure of the throw, you know, live another down. Like, if Caleb Williams throws a bunch of ugly incompletions instead of interceptions, like, that is a step forward. Just don't give Utah free points the way you gave free points to Notre Dame. And I think Caleb Williams knows this, so we don't need to belabor the point. But we need to see pride and a real sense of commitment from everyone. It starts with the offensive line. That group will need to set a tone against a very good Utah defensive front. And if we see a team respond the way we hope it will respond, if we see a team playing with toughness and physicality and passion and high football IQ on both sides of the ball, it should be a win. And that might be the reset button this team needs for the road ahead. So I think USC wins. I probably think it's going to be an ugly game that Utah is able to muck up and keep close. So I'm going to say like 30-23 Not going to be an especially high-scoring game. I think the offensive line is going to have its difficulties, but Utah is not going to be able to score enough to keep pace. 23 points. USC should be able to, if Utah scores 23 points, I think USC should be able to carve out a close win, but a win. And if USC can just do that, then you're probably looking at entering November and the Washington and Oregon games unbeaten in the Pac-12. And so if you can just split with the Huskies and the Ducks, you can make it to Las Vegas. Not that I'm treating that as a likelihood, but as a very realistic possibility.
Yeah, I said it earlier in the week. I'm going to stick with it. I don't think Rising's playing. Obviously, if Rising plays, I'm with you, Matt. He's not going to come out if he's making his debut. What makes Rising special is his toughness, are his legs really, and I just don't see that. Even if he did play, it would be one, a great call for him, and two, that he would be as effective as he would, as we've seen him in the past, as a healthy Cam Rising. I do like what they're doing with Siona Vaki, who's their safety. They're kind of playing two ways, playing. He had an amazing game last week. He had like over 150 yards. They bring him in a Wildcat as well sometimes. I think they're going to have to be creative. Bryson Barnes is just not going to be the answer. As bad as our defenses look, this is not the guy that's going to light us up for anything special. So I see USC in this game 33-20. Again, I think it might be tight early. I think maybe there's some jitters. So actually, it's going to be two ways. Either SC comes out blowing the doors off them and they just get it just goes one-sided, or they might, like you said, Matt, make it ugly. If USC, because USC started out this season, I think they had a streak of like 5 games in a row scoring on their opening drive. Since then, they haven't, and they've started out slow and sluggish, and they just can't get moving. It'll be interesting to see if USC returns to that earlier season form against a very, very good Ute defense. So, I mean, that's why I had that 30 points. I think that 33 points is going to be a slugfest for them to get. But I do think that our talent, also we talked about this earlier, Matt, the Utes are going to be without their star safety. I'm blanking on his name. Matt, you forgot it too?
I'm not sure. I've been focused on Cam Rising. I know that Fillinger is not their starting defensive lineman.
No, their safety went out with a targeting call. I'm probably someone's got it in the chat here.
Targeting call against Cal. I missed that.
Cole Bishop. Cole Bishop's his name.
Wow.
Cole Bishop's out for the first half. And so that's going to be big. So that's why I said 33-20. I think we might get out to a good start off the bat. He is just an amazing player. So it'll be interesting to see if USC can break this trend they have of starting out slow, because again, I hope we do. If they go slow into a game against Washington and see themselves down 17-0, 21-0 in the first quarter or early second quarter, you might as well just call it a night. Same thing in Autzen, probably even more so. You go into Autzen sluggish, the game's gonna be over in the second quarter. So I hope they can break that trend of getting off these slow starts. Keep an eye on that Vaki guy. I think he's going to get his between the tackles. But I look for the Trojans to continue, and a much maligned defense that has now for 7 straight quarters played some pretty solid defense. Let's see if that was a mirage or they can keep it going against, again, a not very strong, not very imposing defense for the Utes, or offense for the Utes.
All right, Tim. Well, as we wind things down here, we're doing the call-in show Thursday at 6.
Well, one thing before we get everyone out of here, hey, you guys, one more last time. If you guys haven't already, hit that like and subscribe and bell notification. You guys, the subscribe button's right below Matt. You click on that subscribe button. If you're not subscribed already, click on it, hit subscribe. We really appreciate everyone out there, whether you agree with me or not. We appreciate all of you being here, even you HR picking stuff. So hit that subscribe, hit that like, and then you'll know when we go live. We are going to have our next call-in show next Thursday. It's going to be another call-in show. It'll be about the Utes. I'm sure somehow people are going to drag Notre Dame into it, so we'll probably covering Notre Dame again. Hopefully, we'll talk more about the Utes at that show.
All right, folks. Thanks for joining us. This was quite a ride here at the Voice of College Football. Unless Tim has any other promos left.
Well, as always, you guys can catch us on for the post-game show. We always go live right after the game, so keep an eye out for that. Wednesday we have the Pac-12 chat show, and then every Sunday on the national channel we have the After Dark show that Ben puts on. So we're out there talking Trojans. If you guys want to see us, make sure you subscribe here and on the national channel.
Thanks for watching, everybody, here at the Voice of College Football.